I accidentally attended the winged princess's wedding, she said. You are the groom now. The city of Eldrin shimmered in the fading light of dusk, its spires and towers reaching like silver fingers into the violet sky. Streets were alive with whispers of magic, the soft hum of enchantments that only the attuned could hear. Lanterns floated without chains, their glow reflecting on cobblestones slick from the evening dew. Travelers and merchants bustled about, yet a curious stillness lingered near the palace gates, as though the air itself held its breath in anticipation. Cale, a young scholar with eyes dark as ink and hair tied carelessly at the nape of his neck, wandered through the streets with no purpose other than to find a place to rest. His robes were travel-worn, dusted with ash from long roads, and a small satchel of books hung from his shoulder. Eldrin was magnificent, yet overwhelming, and Cale had never seen a city so alive with magic and politics in equal measure. As he approached the palace gates, a commotion caught his attention. Guards in polished armor were shouting orders, ushering finely dressed people toward the grand entrance. Golden banners flapped in the wind, each stitched with the emblem of a winged figure, the symbol of the royal family. Cale slowed, curiosity rooting him to the spot. A herald with a booming voice called, "All guests of the winged princess proceed to the grand hall." No exceptions. Cale stepped closer, not realizing he had wandered into the main entrance. The guards, seeing his simple attire, hesitated for only a moment before one of them barked, "You there! Show your invitation!" Cale patted his satchel nervously, realizing he had none. "I am just passing by," he said quickly. "I don't have an invitation." The guard's eyes narrowed. "Everyone must have an invitation or a title. Do you carry one?" Cale shook his head. "No, sir, I am merely a traveler." Before the guard could respond, a wealthy noblewoman appeared from the line of guests. She studied Cale for a long moment, then whispered something to the guard. His eyes widened and he nodded. "Very well," he said reluctantly. "Follow her." Cale's heart pounded in his chest. He had no idea why the noblewoman had intervened, but he was swept forward into the palace without protest. The doors opened into a hall that seemed too bright to be real. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen stars, and the floor was polished so finely that it reflected the golden glow of the candlelight. Music floated through the air, soft strings and a distant flute, yet it carried a tension that prickled Cale's senses. People in intricate gowns and tailored suits whispered in corners, eyes following him with curiosity, suspicion, and a hint of amusement. Cale felt like a shadow walking among statues, invisible yet scrutinized. And then, as if the world paused, the doors at the far end of the hall opened wide. The music faltered, replaced by a silence so complete that it seemed to press against Cale's ears. From the doorway descended Princess Seraphine, the winged princess herself. Her presence was luminous, her wings faintly visible behind her like shimmering veils of silver and gold. They seemed impossibly delicate yet strong, and they caught the candlelight in ways that made them glow as if they contained their own sun. Cale's breath caught. He had read stories of her in old scrolls and tomes, how she had been cursed by a sorceress long ago, doomed never to fly freely unless chosen by true love. But seeing her in person, with the soft light of the hall dancing across her wings, was like looking at a legend come alive. Her gaze swept over the crowd and then it stopped. It fixed on him. Cale felt the weight of her eyes like a hand on his chest. The music stuttered, the whispers hushed. The princess took a single step forward, and all at once it felt as if time had slowed. "You," she said, her voice clear and commanding, yet with an edge of something unspoken, something vulnerable. "You are the groom now." Cale's heart thundered in disbelief. He opened his mouth, but no words came. The hall erupted into murmurs, gasps, and shocked whispers. Guards stiffened, nobles clutched their hands to their mouths, and Cale felt every eye on him, heavy with judgment, curiosity, and expectation. "Wait," Cale stammered finally. I'm not." But Seraphine raised a single hand, and the room fell silent again. Her wings flared slightly, just enough to shimmer like liquid silver. "The law of Eldrin," she said softly, yet each word carried a power that pressed against him, "does not allow refusal when a royal decree is spoken in a wedding hall. You cannot turn away." The words sank into him. The law, the ceremony. His life had twisted in an instant from wandering scholar to something else entirely. Cale's mind raced. He had no idea who she truly was beyond stories and legends, no knowledge of the court's politics, and certainly no preparation for a wedding. let alone one where he was named groom. The noblewoman who had let him in earlier stepped forward, her expression a mixture of apology and awe. The princess, she is not mistaken. You are chosen, by law and by destiny. Kale's knees weakened. He had stumbled into this hall by accident, yet now every step forward would feel like surrender. The music began again, slow and haunting, a melody that felt like it had been written for fate itself. Seraphine descended the last few steps of the staircase, her wings folding elegantly behind her. She stopped before him, close enough that he could see the subtle tension in her jaw, the quiet fire in her eyes, and the faint tremor that betrayed her fear. Despite her courage, there was an unspoken question lingering between them. Would he accept the impossible? Would he step into the unknown alongside her? Kale finally found his voice, though it trembled. I don't even know your name, he said, though he had already known it from books and whispers. Princess Seraphine, the cursed winged princess. Her lips curved into a faint, almost sad smile. And yet it does not matter, she said. Names are for introductions. Deeds, choices, and courage, those are what shape destinies. Yours has been chosen for me. A murmur ran through the crowd again, some gasping, some whispering of scandal, others of intrigue. Kale's mind whirled. How could he possibly be part of this? He was a scholar, not a nobleman. He knew nothing of court politics, magic, or royal intrigue. And yet, there was something about her, her wings, her gaze, the raw intensity of her presence that rooted him to the spot. He glanced at the gathered nobles, then back at her. I don't understand, he said. Why me? Why now? Her eyes softened just enough that he saw a glimpse of vulnerability hidden beneath the royal poise. Because, she whispered, you are unbound. You have not yet been shaped by fear or ambition. And I need someone who can face the impossible willingly. Kale's mind raced. The impossible. He had studied impossible things in books, ancient spells, forgotten histories, magical creatures, but nothing had prepared him for this. And yet beneath his panic, a strange curiosity stirred. A pull toward the mystery of her wings, the weight of destiny pressing on both of them. Before he could answer, a herald stepped forward, bowing low. Princess Seraphine, he said, voice trembling slightly, all is ready for the ceremony. The court awaits. Kale swallowed hard. He wanted to run, to flee into the shadows of the palace corridors, but some part of him, the part that had always been drawn to stories, to adventure, to the unknown, held him still. He realized that leaving was no longer a choice. Seraphine extended her hand, her eyes locking onto his. Will you step forward with me? She asked, not demanding, but offering a path that was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Kale's fingers brushed hers, and a shiver ran through him, a mixture of fear and wonder. He nodded, almost imperceptibly, and together they walked toward the center of the hall. Every step echoed like a drumbeat of destiny. The guests watched in silence as the princess and the accidental groom approached the ceremonial dais. The chandeliers above glimmered like stars, the candles flickered as if moved by unseen wings, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with unspoken magic. Kale could feel it, the weight of expectation, of destiny, and of something deeper, something he could not yet name. And then, as they reached the dais, Seraphine spread her wings slightly again, the golden edges catching the candlelight, and whispered almost to herself, "So it begins." Kale's heart pounded. The world around him seemed suspended in a dreamlike haze, beautiful and terrifying all at once. He had no idea what lay ahead, what dangers, what trials, or what revelations awaited, but one thing was certain. His life, as he had known it, was over. And in its place, a story of wings, magic, and destiny was beginning. The sun rose over Eldrin, casting golden streaks across the palace walls, yet the city seemed quieter than usual. Word of the wedding and its shocking declaration had spread through the streets, carrying with it whispers of scandal, awe, and disbelief. Kale, the accidental groom, now walked the palace corridors with a careful, measured step. Every glance from a noble, every whisper from a servant reminded him that he was no ordinary guest. He had been chosen, bound by law and by destiny, to the winged princess, Seraphine. The morning air was thick with tension, as Kale found himself in a small chamber adorned with tapestries depicting the history of the royal family. His fingers brushed over the woven images of winged rulers, each one caught mid-flight, their faces solemn, their eyes filled with wisdom and burden. He could not help but feel the weight of expectation pressing on him. Seraphine entered the room silently, her wings folded behind her back. They shimmered faintly in the soft morning light, like silver mist caught in the sun. There was a quiet authority in her steps, a grace that seemed to demand both admiration and fear. Yet despite her regal presence, there was an edge of vulnerability in her expression that only he could perceive. "Kale," she said, her voice soft but commanding, "you must understand what this union means. It is not merely a ceremony. It is a bond that carries consequences, both magical and political." Kale nodded, though his mind raced. "I understand some of it," he admitted, "but I do not know how I can fit into this world. I am not a noble nor a warrior. I am only a scholar." Seraphine's eyes softened, but only slightly. "That is precisely why you were chosen. The law demands a partner who is unshaped by fear, ambition, or desire for power. You are unbound. Your courage will be tested, and your loyalty will be tested, but if you are willing to walk this path with me, you will see wonders beyond what you can imagine." Kale swallowed hard. The weight of her words pressed upon him. To walk beside her was to step into a world of unknown dangers, ancient magic, and courts filled with secrets. Yet beneath his fear there was a spark, a thrill, almost, of adventure he had only read about in dusty books and forgotten scrolls. As they spoke, a servant entered, carrying a tray with breakfast. Kale could hardly eat. The palace food seemed delicate and beautiful, but his mind was consumed with thoughts of the princess and the decree that had altered his life overnight. Seraphine, meanwhile, moved with quiet purpose, her wings brushing the tapestry-lined walls as she guided him toward the palace courtyard. The courtyard was a vast expanse of stone, lined with statues of winged figures frozen in mid-flight. The air smelled of blooming night flowers, their scent sweet and heavy. A gentle fountain whispered in the center, and the sound seemed almost like a heartbeat in the quiet morning. "You must learn about the curse," Seraphine said, breaking the silence. Her wings lifted slightly as she spoke, catching the light and casting shifting shadows on the courtyard walls. "It is not simply a legend. My wings are bound by an ancient spell placed upon me by a sorceress who sought to control my destiny. I cannot fly freely. I cannot leave the palace without consequences." Kale's eyes widened. "Consequences?" he asked. "What kind?" She lowered her gaze. "If I attempt to escape the palace alone, the wings bring pain, illness, and madness. If someone seeks to harm me, the magic protects me, but it does not distinguish between friend and foe. Only a chosen partner, one who accepts me fully, can help me break the curse safely." Kale felt a shiver run down his spine. The law had chosen him, but now he understood the depth of the responsibility. He was not merely a guest or a scholar. He was entwined with the princess's fate in a way that demanded courage, wisdom, and heart. They began to walk through the palace gardens, the flowers and trees bending under the light breeze. Seraphine led him to a secluded section, where a small pool reflected the sky like a sheet of glass. Her wings spread slowly as she stood by the water's edge, shimmering in the sunlight. "You must learn to sense the magic," she said. "It flows through everything, through stone, water, air, even through people. If you can understand it, you can help me control it, protect me, and perhaps, one day, free me." Kale knelt by the pool, watching the ripples shimmer with an almost sentient glow. He had studied magic in theory, but never had he felt it so strongly as here in her presence. Every ripple, every flutter of her wings, carried power and purpose. He realized that understanding this world would take not only intellect but heart. As the morning passed, Seraphine tested him with small exercises, sensing the flow of magical energy in the air, identifying hidden glyphs carved into stones, and even moving small objects with his focus alone. Kale stumbled repeatedly, frustration gnawing at him, but Seraphine remained patient, guiding him with quiet insistence. "You will fail," she said, "and yet that is part of the lesson. Courage is not absence of fear, Kale. It is the willingness to step forward even when the outcome is unknown." Kale met her gaze, feeling a mixture of admiration and unease. There was something in her voice, in her wings, that made him want to rise above his doubts, yet he could not ignore the fear clawing at his chest. He realized that this was only the beginning of trials he could not yet imagine. As afternoon approached, a horn sounded in the distance, echoing through the palace. Seraphine stiffened. "That sound," she said, her voice tight. "It is him." Kale looked at her, puzzled. "Him?" Her wings flexed slightly, a faint shimmer of gold at the edges. "The exiled prince," she said quietly. He is the one who cursed me. I thought he had been banished for good, yet he returns now as if drawn by this union. Kale felt a chill. Stories of the exiled prince had always been whispered in the streets. A man of immense power, cunning, and malice, who had once sought to control the winged princess and the throne itself. His presence now meant danger, perhaps not only to Seraphine, but to the entire kingdom. Do we fight him? Kale asked, uncertain. Seraphine's wings shifted, bristling like a warning. I do not know yet. I have hoped he would remain distant, but now we must be prepared for trials for his schemes and for the tests he will place before us. And Kale, you must be ready. Your courage will be tested beyond anything you have known. The day passed in a blur of lessons, exercises, and quiet conversation. Kale began to understand the weight of Seraphine's life, the constant tension between freedom and obligation, power and vulnerability. In fleeting moments, he saw her not as a princess, not as a legend, but as a woman burdened by a curse and longing for connection, for someone who would see her truth beyond the wings and the crown. As dusk approached, the palace halls filled with light and shadow, casting long shapes across the floor. Kale and Seraphine stood near a balcony, looking over the city. Below, lanterns began to glow, and the streets sparkled like a river of gold. I do not expect you to understand fully, Seraphine said softly. But know this, the bond we share now is more than ceremony. It is protection, trust, and a choice. Each of us must decide to step forward willingly to face what comes together. Kale's hands clenched at his sides. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, a mixture of fear, anticipation, and something new, a sense of purpose he had never known. I will try, he said. I will do what I can. Seraphine's wings brushed the air lightly, a gesture of approval. Then we begin. But before the night fully settled, a shadow appeared at the palace gates. The exiled prince had arrived, his presence commanding attention even from afar. Rumors whispered through the court. He had not come merely to observe, but to intervene, to disrupt, and perhaps to reclaim what he believed was stolen. Kale's heart raced. The first true trial had arrived, and he realized that the path ahead would test not only his courage but his heart. The princess, her wings poised like shimmering blades of silver, glanced at him, eyes filled with both warning and expectation. You must be ready, she said. Not only for what comes, but for what we may discover about ourselves. Only then can the curse be challenged, and only then can we hope for freedom. Kale swallowed, gazing at her wings, at the shadows of the palace, and at the approaching figure. He had stumbled into this world by accident, yet now he understood that there was no turning back. To walk beside her was to embrace destiny itself, with all its danger, mystery, and the possibility of a love he could not yet name. The first trial awaited, and the night deepened with the promise of challenge, danger, and the slow unfolding of a bond that would define both their fates. The forest outside Eldrin stretched endlessly, its canopy thick and dark, filtering the sunlight into a patchwork of shadows. And golden beams. Kale and Seraphine walked along a narrow path, the crunch of leaves under their feet the only sound, except for the occasional whisper of wind through the branches. The palace and its glittering halls were far behind them now, replaced by the raw, untamed world beyond the city walls, a place where magic pulsed through the air, and unseen eyes seemed to follow their every move. Kale's mind was restless. The events at the palace, the exiled prince's sudden appearance, and the weight of Seraphine's wings pressed on him like stones in a backpack he could not remove. He had expected a quiet life of study, of dusty books and distant adventures. Yet now he was walking beside a princess with wings shimmering like silver and gold, bound by a curse, and hunted by a figure who had brought fear to the kingdom for decades. Seraphine seemed aware of his tension. Her wings were partially spread, brushing the leaves above them as she moved. Every so often she glanced at him, her expression a mix of caution and quiet concern. Kale, she said softly, you must learn to sense the magic in this forest. It is alive. It watches, it judges, and it tests. The trees themselves are older than the kingdom, and they remember every betrayal, every act of courage, every choice made in their shadows. Kale stopped, looking around. The trees were enormous, their roots twisting and curling like serpents beneath the moss-covered ground. He could almost feel a heartbeat in the soil, a slow rhythm that seemed to echo in his chest. How do I sense it? He asked. Seraphine knelt beside him, her wings folding neatly behind her. Close your eyes, she instructed. Feel the air, listen to the rhythm of the forest, let it speak to you without thought, without fear. Magic is not just power, it is intention, presence, and awareness. It is the connection between all things. Kale obeyed, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath. At first, he felt only the chill of the air and the slight rustle of leaves. But slowly, he began to sense something more, an undercurrent of energy, subtle and persistent, like the pulse of a living being. He felt it twist around his fingers, climb his arms, and settle in his chest. It was the forest, alive and watching, and he understood for the first time that magic was not only something to be studied, but something to be felt. Seraphine's eyes shone faintly in the dim light. "You are beginning," she said quietly. "Do not fear it. Trust yourself and it will trust you." They continued deeper into the forest, the path narrowing as the trees grew closer together. Shadows shifted unnaturally, and Kale felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Do you feel that?" he whispered. Seraphine's wings twitched. "Yes. Something watches us." Suddenly, a figure leapt from the underbrush, a shadowy creature, half human, half beast, with eyes that glowed like embers. Kale stumbled back, but Seraphine stepped forward, her wings spreading fully. They glimmered like silver fire, and a wave of magic pulsed through the clearing. The creature snarled and lunged, but Kale, guided by instinct and the subtle teachings Seraphine had given him, raised his hand and felt the energy of the forest respond. Roots from the ground twisted gently around the creature, holding it at bay without harm. Seraphine's eyes widened in approval. "You are learning faster than I expected," she said, her voice calm but tinged with relief. "Magic responds to intent. Yours is strong because you do not seek to harm, only to protect." Kale exhaled, feeling a mixture of fear and triumph. I think I understand," he said. "A little." The creature retreated, disappearing into the shadows, and the forest seemed to exhale, the tension in the air easing. Kale looked at Seraphine, her wings folding gracefully behind her. There was a softness in her gaze now, a quiet acknowledgement that he was more than he realized, that he had the courage to step into the unknown. As they walked, Seraphine began to speak of the curse that bound her wings. "The exiled prince did not act alone," she said. "The sorceress who cursed me was clever, cruel, and patient. She knew that love, or even the attempt at it, could break what she created. But she underestimated the strength of choice, the will to protect, and the power of hearts aligned." Kale listened, feeling the weight of her words. "And us?" he asked. "Our bond?" Seraphine's wings shivered slightly. "It is fragile, it is powerful, it is everything I have ever hoped for and feared. You must understand, Kale, if we fail, the consequences are not mine alone. Your life, your heart are now intertwined with mine." Kale's heart thumped. The thought was terrifying and thrilling all at once. He realized that he did not merely walk beside a princess. He walked alongside a destiny that demanded courage, loyalty, and an openness he had never known he possessed. They set up camp near a small stream, the water sparkling in the moonlight like scattered stars. Seraphine tended to a small fire, while Kale sat nearby, studying the flow of magic in the air and the shimmer of her wings. The night was quiet, yet charged with tension, the kind that comes before great trials. "You have a way of seeing things differently," Seraphine said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Most people only see the surface, power, wealth, fear, but you see beneath it. Perhaps that is why you were chosen." Kale felt warmth in his chest at her words. "I do not fully understand why I am here," he admitted, "but I do know one thing: I will not abandon you, not now, not ever." Seraphine's wings lifted slightly, brushing the night air. There was a soft glow in her eyes, and for a moment she allowed herself to believe in what was possible. "Then we walk together," she said. "Through danger, shadows, and the unknown, together we may find freedom or discover what lies beyond it." The night deepened, and Kale felt the pull of the forest's magic in his dreams. He saw visions of distant places, forgotten ruins, and shadowed figures that whispered warnings he could not fully comprehend. Yet beneath the fear, there was a steady pulse of determination. He would not falter, not while she depended on him. Morning came with the sound of birdsong and the rustle of leaves. Kale awoke to Seraphine standing by the stream, her wings partially spread, eyes scanning the horizon. "The trials are only beginning," she said. "There are relics hidden in this forest, ancient and powerful. To break the curse, or even to defend ourselves, we must find them. But they are protected, by magic, by shadows, and by the past itself." Kale stood, brushing the dirt from his robes. "Then we begin," he said, determination settling in his chest like a flame. Their journey took them deeper into the forest, where sunlight barely reached the ground. Strange flowers glowed faintly in the shadows, and trees twisted in impossible shapes, their roots forming natural barriers. Kale felt the magic here as a constant hum, vibrating in his bones and urging him to stay alert. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the clearing. From the shadows emerged another creature, larger than the first, its eyes burning with an unnatural intelligence. It circled them, testing, probing. Kale stepped forward, feeling the energy of the forest rise to meet him. He extended his hands, focusing on protection, on control, not aggression. The creature hesitated, its gaze fixed on him. Slowly it sank to the ground, bowing its head in recognition of his intent. Seraphine's eyes widened. "You are learning to command the forest, Kale," she whispered. "Not with force, but with understanding. That is the truest kind of power." Kale felt pride, but also the weight of responsibility. The forest was alive, and it would judge them harshly if they failed. He realized that every step, every choice, would have consequences far beyond their understanding. As dusk approached again, they reached a clearing where the remnants of an ancient temple lay half buried in moss and roots. The air here was thick with magic, older than anything Kale had ever encountered. Seraphine's wings spread fully, glowing faintly in response to the energy of the place. "This," she said, her voice reverent, "is one of the relics. It is protected not just by magic, but by trials. Only those who face their fears, their doubts, and their truths may approach it. We must be ready, Kale." Kale nodded, his heart pounding. The journey had only just begun, and already the challenges tested not only their courage, but their trust in one another. He realized that he could not rely solely on knowledge, nor on magic, nor on destiny. He had to rely on his heart and on the bond forming between him and the winged princess. Night fell and the clearing glowed with faint, ethereal light. The forest seemed to watch, waiting for the trial to begin. Kale stood beside Seraphine, feeling the pulse of the magic, the weight of the curse, and the unspoken promise that they would face it together. The palace of Eldrin stood in uneasy silence as Kale and Seraphine returned from the forest. The golden spires glinted under the morning sun, but inside, tension wrapped around every corridor like a shadow. Word had spread quickly. The exiled prince had been seen near the forest, and rumors whispered that he had not come alone. Courtiers spoke in hushed tones, their fear and curiosity mingling with awe at the bond between the winged princess and her accidental groom. Kale walked beside Seraphine through the main hall, trying to appear confident, though every step felt heavy. The weight of the recent trials in the forest pressed on him. He had faced creatures and magic that had no right to exist in the world, and yet he had survived. More than that, he had begun to understand Seraphine, not only as a princess or a legendary figure, but as a woman burdened with a curse, longing for freedom, yet strong enough to protect those she cared for. "You carry yourself well," Seraphine said softly, her wings brushing the walls as they moved. "But do not let appearances fool you. The exiled prince's schemes are not yet revealed. He will strike where we are weakest, and he knows our hearts as well as our minds." Kale's heart pounded. He had expected trials in the forest, tests of courage and magic, but the palace itself now seemed a battleground. Every whisper in the corridors felt like a potential trap, every glance from a noble a challenge. Yet beneath the fear, Kale felt a growing determination. He could not allow Seraphine to face danger alone, not when the bond they shared demanded trust, courage, and partnership. They reached a private chamber overlooking the city. Seraphine stood by the window, wings folded elegantly, gazing at the streets below. "The exiled prince will come for more than me," she said quietly. "He will seek to disrupt the balance of the court, to bend allies to his will, to test the very foundation of the kingdom. We must be prepared." Kale took a deep breath. "Then we will face him together," he said. "Whatever comes, I will not let him harm you or anyone else." Seraphine turned, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of relief and something deeper, almost unspoken. "Kale, the path we walk is not only one of defense, it is also a path of choice. Every step we take, every decision carries weight. The curse, my wings, and even our bond all require sacrifice, courage, and trust." The days passed in a blur of preparation. Kale trained with the guidance of palace mages, learning to harness both the forest magic and the latent energy within himself. Seraphine, ever patient yet firm, helped him understand the rhythm of power, the subtle cues of magic, and the importance of intent over brute force. Together, they strategized, anticipating the exiled prince's moves, yet neither could predict the cunning and danger he would bring. One evening, Kale found himself alone in the palace gardens, the moon casting silver light over the fountains and flowers. He reflected on how much had changed since the fateful day he had stumbled into the wedding hall. He had been a wandering scholar, content with books and knowledge, but now he was bound to a princess, a curse, and a destiny he could barely comprehend. Yet beneath the fear he felt a spark of purpose, a connection to something greater than himself. Seraphine approached silently, her wings folding gently behind her. "Kale," she said softly, "do you ever wonder if you are truly ready for this?" Kale met her gaze. "I do," he admitted, "every day, but I also know that I cannot step back, not when we have already begun this path together." Her wings shivered slightly in acknowledgement. "Then we walk forward no matter the cost." The next day brought a sense of foreboding. Courtiers whispered of the exiled prince's movements, and a sudden alert sounded across the palace. Dark figures had infiltrated the city walls, and it was clear that the prince's plan was unfolding faster than anticipated. Seraphine's wings lifted, catching the sunlight, a shimmer of silver and gold that warned of her readiness. Kale followed her to the throne room where the council had gathered in panic. "He seeks to control fear," Seraphine said, addressing the assembly, "but we will not falter. We must act with courage, with knowledge, and with unity." Kale's heart pounded as the exiled prince himself appeared, stepping through the gates with a presence that seemed to darken the room. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the gathered nobles, finally resting on Seraphine and Kale. "So," he said, voice smooth but edged with malice, "the princess has chosen a scholar as her partner. Bold choice or foolish, we shall see." The council erupted in murmurs, and Kale felt the weight of expectation crash down on him. Yet he stood firm, drawing on the courage he had cultivated in the forest and the trust he had built with Seraphine. "We shall see indeed," he said, meeting the prince's gaze without flinching. The exiled prince's smile was thin, almost imperceptible. "Very well," he said, "let the trials begin." Over the following days, Kale and Seraphine faced challenges designed to test their bond. The exiled prince sent illusions into the palace, creatures that appeared friendly yet carried subtle threats. Kale learned to trust his instincts, to act with both heart and mind, and to sense the undercurrents of magic in every shadow. Seraphine guided him, yet each trial forced them both to confront their fears, their doubts, and the unspoken truths of their hearts. One night, as they trained in a secluded hall, Kale stumbled, his focus breaking under the weight of exhaustion and fear. A shadow loomed over him, and instinctively he called on the magic he had learned. Light burst from his hands, casting the shadow back, yet leaving him trembling. Seraphine's wings enveloped him briefly, a shield of warmth and reassurance. "You did well," she said softly, her eyes searching his. "You faced your fear, Kale, that is what matters. Courage is not the absence of doubt, but the willingness to move forward despite it." Kale exhaled, feeling both relief and a strange exhilaration. He realized that their bond was growing, not just as protector and princess, but as equals facing a world that demanded strength, trust, and heart. The exiled prince, however, was relentless. His attacks became bolder, his schemes more intricate, targeting not only Seraphine but the court itself. Kale and Seraphine had to navigate treacherous politics, magical traps, and whispered betrayals from within the palace. Each day tested their patience, their skills, and their hearts, yet also deepened the connection between them. Late one evening, after a day of particularly harrowing trials, Kale and Seraphine found themselves alone on the palace balcony. The city stretched below them, lanterns twinkling like distant stars. A soft wind stirred the air, carrying with it the scent of blooming flowers and the faint echo of the forest. Kale leaned against the railing, exhaustion and relief mingling in his chest. "Do you think we can truly defeat him?" he asked quietly. Seraphine spread her wings slightly, catching the moonlight. "I do not know," she admitted, "but we must, not because victory is certain, but because it is the only path that aligns with our hearts. Courage is not measured by the absence of danger, Kale, but by the willingness to act in spite of it." Kale's gaze met hers, and in that moment he felt the depth of the bond they had forged. It was more than trust or duty. It was a connection that transcended fear, magic, and destiny. He realized that he would follow her into any darkness, face any trial, if it meant keeping her safe and walking beside her in the light. The night deepened, and the first real confrontation with the exiled prince approached. His presence loomed over the palace like a storm on the horizon, and Kale felt a mixture of fear and determination. Seraphine's wings shimmered in the moonlight, a beacon of hope and defiance. As dawn approached, the exiled prince's shadow fell over the palace once more. Kale and Seraphine prepared themselves, knowing that the battle ahead would test not only their skills but the strength of their hearts. They had learned through trials, danger, and trust that courage was a choice, and love, quiet, unspoken, and powerful, was its own form of magic. The throne room of Eldrin seemed to hold its breath. Light from the high windows shimmered on the polished floors, catching the dust in golden beams. Every corner of the vast hall was tense with anticipation. Nobles and guards had gathered, though their faces betrayed fear as much as curiosity. At the center, the exiled prince stood, his presence commanding, dark, and impossibly sharp. The aura of power around him made the air feel heavier, as if magic itself trembled at his will. Kale's heart pounded in his chest, echoing in rhythm with the slow beat of Seraphine's wings. She stood beside him, her silver and gold wings partially spread, catching the sunlight like molten metal. They had faced shadows, creatures, illusions, and treachery together, yet this confrontation felt unlike anything before. Here, in the palace that had nurtured her for years, the final test awaited. "You are bold to bring yourself here," the exiled prince said, voice smooth but edged with menace. "But do you truly understand what you face?" Kale straightened, meeting the prince's gaze without fear. "I do," he said, "and I do not stand alone." Seraphine's wings flared slightly, a radiant shimmer of silver light that bathed the room. Her eyes, usually calm and guarded, now blazed with determination. "You underestimate the bond we share," she said softly, yet every word carried weight. "It is more than duty, more than obligation. It is trust, courage, and choice, and it will not be broken." The exiled prince's smile was thin, almost cruel. "Very well," he said, "then let the trial begin." With a gesture, shadows surged from the corners of the room, swirling into forms of twisted shapes, echoing fears long buried in memory. They lunged at Kale and Seraphine, each one a fragment of doubt, regret, and fear. The floor trembled beneath their steps, and the chandeliers rattled as if the palace itself reacted to the surge of magic. Kale took a deep breath, closing his eyes for a moment, and reached into the lessons he had learned in the forest. He felt the pulse of the magic around him, the rhythm of the palace stones, and the quiet strength of Seraphine beside him. He extended his hands, calling upon the energy of protection, of intent, and of connection. A soft, golden light erupted from his palms, weaving through the shadows and holding them at bay. Seraphine's wings flared, and she stepped forward, chanting softly in a language older than the palace itself. The combined magic of their bond pushed the shadows back, forcing them to dissipate into mist. The exiled prince's eyes narrowed, but he did not falter. "You are strong together," he said, voice low and dangerous. "But strength alone will not undo what has been done." Seraphine's gaze did not waver. "Then we will do more than strength. We will act with heart, with choice, and with courage." The prince's magic surged again, more powerful this time, twisting the air and forming a whirlwind of dark energy. Kale felt the pull, threatening to drag him into despair, but Seraphine grasped his hand firmly. Her wings brushed his shoulder, and the warmth of her presence steadied him. "Trust me," she whispered. "Trust in what we share." Kale nodded, feeling a bond deeper than fear or logic, a connection forged through trials, shadows, and shared courage. Together they focused, combining their magic, their intent, and their hearts. A beam of light erupted from Seraphine's wings, intertwining with Kale's energy, and surged toward the prince's shadow, forcing him to retreat step by step. The prince's eyes blazed, not with anger but with fascination. "So, love is your weapon," he said. "The bond of hearts stronger than magic, stronger than fear," Seraphine did not falter. "It is stronger than hatred, stronger than curses, and stronger than the shadows you send. It is choice, and it is unbreakable when true." Kale and Seraphine's energy surged together, not to destroy, but to purify. The prince staggered as the power of their bond filled the room, the shadows dissolving into harmless whispers. The curse that had bound Seraphine's wings began to shimmer, the chains of ancient magic cracking and fading under the combined force of courage, trust, and love. The exiled prince's expression shifted, a mixture of disbelief and reluctant respect. Impossible that such a bond could resist all I've prepared. His voice trailed into silence as the last of his magic dissipated. Kale felt exhaustion and relief wash over him. He had feared this moment, yet he had faced it, not alone but with the princess by his side. Seraphine's wings, once bound by ancient magic, lifted fully, shining in the light of the morning sun. They stretched wide, strong, and free, the shimmer of silver and gold reflecting every corner of the throne room. "It is done," Seraphine said softly, tears glimmering in her eyes. "The curse is broken, we are free." Kale stepped closer, his hand brushing hers, fingers intertwining. "Not just free," he said. "Together." Seraphine smiled, a mixture of joy, relief, and awe. "Together," she echoed. The exiled prince, now powerless, bowed his head slightly in acknowledgement. "You have shown what I could not foresee, the strength of hearts aligned. Perhaps there is hope for Eldrin after all." He turned and left, leaving the throne room in silence, the tension slowly dissolving into calm. Kale and Seraphine remained in the center of the hall, wings brushing lightly, hearts pounding with the echo of what they had endured. The court, once fearful and tense, now stared in awe at the sight of a princess standing free, a young scholar at her side, and the unbreakable bond that had saved both them and the kingdom. As the days passed, Eldrin began to heal from the shadow that had loomed over it. Nobles spoke of courage and love, of trust and choice, and of the miraculous bond between the winged princess and her accidental groom. Kale and Seraphine continued to train, explore, and strengthen their connection, knowing that while the curse was gone, the journey of growth, understanding, and partnership was just beginning. One evening, as the sun set behind the palace, casting golden light across the city, Kale and Seraphine stood on a balcony, wings gently brushing the air. Below, the streets were alive with celebration, yet above there was peace, a quiet moment of reflection and hope. "Kale," Seraphine said softly, wings folding behind her, "do you understand now why you were chosen?" Kale looked at her, the depth of their shared journey reflected in his eyes. "Yes," he said. "It was never about chance. It was about courage, choice, and trust. And about love, even if I did not recognize it at first." Seraphine's wings shimmered faintly in the light. "Then we walk forward, not as accidental partners, but as equals, as allies, and as something more." Kale took a deep breath, feeling the weight and beauty of their shared destiny. "Something more," he agreed. The night air carried the whispers of the forest, the faint hum of magic, and the lingering promise of adventure. The palace of Eldrin was quiet now, yet the story of the winged princess and her accidental groom would echo through its halls for generations. They had faced shadows, trials, and destiny itself, and they had emerged stronger, wiser, and united. Seraphine spread her wings fully one last time, stretching toward the sky, free at last. Beside her, Kale felt the pulse of courage and connection, the magic of trust and heart intertwining with hers. Together, they took the first step toward a future filled not only with challenges, but with possibility, hope, and the quiet power of love that had been forged in shadow and trial. As dawn broke over Eldrin, the city basked in the soft light of a new day. The princess soared into the sky, her wings glinting like silver fire with Kale beside her. They moved as one, hearts and magic aligned, no longer bound by curse, fear, or doubt. And though the future remained uncertain, they knew one truth above all. Whatever awaited them, they would face it together. The story of the winged princess and the accidental groom had reached its climax, yet the legend of their courage, trust, and love would endure forever. A tale whispered among the spires of Eldrin, carried on the wind, and remembered in the hearts of all who dared to choose hope. Over fear,